All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ray Buchan. We're going to spend the next 30 to 60 minutes going through a presentation talking about how lean manufacturing and ERP technology can coexist. A Success Partner or an Epicor Platinum Partner based out of Waterloo, Ontario, with staff across Canada and the US. And myself, so my background's in manufacturing and operations. I ran a plant for 11 years in Brampton, Ontario. We were in the mining industry, purchased an ERP system in 1997, went into consulting and implementing ERP in 2002, and I've worked with 3 different systems in my career. I've got Nigel Southway with me today, who's going to be talking a lot about Lean and Industry 4.0. I'll let Nigel introduce himself when I pass it to him, and I'm just going to run through a few slides here. A little bit of housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded, so happy to share this after the fact. And if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt. We've got a small group today, or use the chat window, type your questions in there or comments, and we'd be happy to respond to those as we go through. All right. So talking about lean manufacturing, I want to read this statement here. So while lean manufacturing focuses on eliminating waste and optimizing processes on the shop floor, ERP systems provide the technological infrastructure to support these efforts by enabling visibility, streamlining workflows, facilitating data-driven decision-making, optimizing inventory management, and fostering a culture of continuous improvement throughout the organization. So that's a statement that I truly believe in, and how ERP and lean manufacturing can coexist. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. When we look at lean manufacturing and ERP systems, they can complement each other in several ways. So when we dive a little bit deeper, let's talk about visibility and transparency. ERP systems provide real-time visibility into production processes, inventory levels, and resource utilization. This transparency enables lean practitioners to identify inefficiencies and areas for improvement more easily. Streamline workflows. So by integrating various functions within an organization, ERP systems can help eliminate silos and streamline workflows. A lot of the customers that we see, they've got disparate systems, a lot of Excel spreadsheets, maybe QuickBooks or Sage for finance, maybe a homegrown ERP or an older ERP, and there's silos of information. So these are not integrated, they're not streamlined, and you can see how that would benefit lean initiatives. Data-driven decision-making. So ERP systems collect and analyze vast amounts of data from different departments of the organization. Lean manufacturing relies on the data to identify waste and track performance metrics, making ERP systems invaluable for informed decision-making in lean initiatives. So you've got to have good data. Number 4, inventory management. ERP systems can assist in implementing just-in-time or JIT inventory practices, a key component of lean manufacturing. So by synchronizing inventory levels with production needs, ERP systems help minimize excess inventory and reduce carrying cost. So that's always a big ROI that we find with customers that implement Epicor or other ERP systems. They're usually carrying too much inventory. When I don't know what I need when, I tend to buy more because I don't want to run out. So you're tying up cash, you're tying up space on the shelves. And the last one here, talking about continuous improvement. So ERP systems support continuous improvement efforts by providing tools for performance monitoring, root cause analysis, and feedback mechanisms. So this facilitates lean manufacturing where small incremental improvements are made over time. So these are all lean initiatives, and this is tying these lean initiatives into ERP, showing you how ERP can complement or benefit those initiatives. So as I said, we're an Epicor Platinum partner, so our business is implementing and supporting Epicor Kinetic ERP. It is a full embedded solution. I mentioned earlier that I worked with 3 different systems in my career. The big differentiator with Epicor is the depth of functionality in the core solution without relying on third-party add-ons, and really just that streamed flow from quote to cash, all embedded within the core functionality. We're not going to do a software demonstration today, but I will show you a couple of screenshots. This is Epicore's homepage. So it is a cloud-based solution. You can see the URL at the top. It runs on any browser. And with any system, you'll have a menu structure where you can click through things like part master and quotes and sales orders and things like that. Epicore provides this homepage. And again, more efficiency, streamlining those workflows. As a user, I'm going to personalize my own homepage to have the business processes or functions on my screen that I use every day. So I'm not hunting and looking for things through modules or processes that I don't use. My processes are right here on my home screen. Nigel's going to talk about Industry 4.0 and how it connects your shop floor to ERP. This is really a big game changer, and again helping lean initiatives. So what we're talking about here is machine monitoring, tracking OEE or overall equipment efficiency. So think about a connected shop floor where we're getting feedback loops on temperatures and parts complete, and parts scrap, and uptime and downtime and things like that. So this is actually embedded within an Epicor that you're seeing right now. And if you can see the dots on top of the machines, they would signify whether a machine is running efficiently or not. Now, the triggers on that with Epicore's IoT is that when something is going wrong, workflows update dashboards and send automatic alerts to action production issues. So those triggers may update a dashboard, but they also may trigger actions to create a rework order or a maintenance order, things like that. So a connected floor is critical in helping your lean initiatives as well. So that's it for me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to pass it over to Nigel and let him take it from there. Over to you, Nigel.
Okay, I'm just loading up here. I assume you can see my screen.
Everything looks good.
All right, it actually moves forward. Great. So, well, thank you for that introduction. And I've been working with these guys as success partners for some time, off and on, depending on what they need. And I'm just going to give you an exciting and informative discussion, a presentation on lean manufacturing. I'll skip that slide a little bit. I think that I'm not a new guy at this. I've been in the industry for 55 years, and I've been involved in lean thinking from the early beginning. I mean, we're talking about lean. My first book was actually written before the term lean was invented. So I've been talking about this subject for a long time. After a time as director at Motorola in the 1980s, installing lean manufacturing systems there, I joined a lean consulting group and published this how-to book on lean thinking in the early 90s. So that first book is 1992. And I've been since then a practitioner, consultant, educator since then, including assignments running and improving operations in Mexico and China. So, this lean initiative's taken me worldwide. I've had some great fun. And since 2010, while I was chair of the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, I started an advocacy group to take back manufacturing, and that is my second book shown here. So, it's a conduit of trying to be very involved in the initiatives of change, and then looking at the bigger picture as to how our manufacturing is doing and what we do about it. So that's my background. You can see I've done a lot of different things, but that's probably where I should focus for this presentation. So there's the first book, how-to book on Lean and Six Sigma. And when we wrote that book, of course, Lean was just starting, and it was an exciting new technology that everybody wanted to know about. So we had a great time, a lot of attention span, and we were very busy through the 90s. And I've spent a lot of time since then working for different clients worldwide in different industries. I think what's made me very kept me going is the fact I've been involved in very many different industries, not only manufacturing but services as well. on lean thinking, helping these guys keep their productivity going worldwide. So that's pretty much where I've been at. You know, you can see it's pretty much soup to nuts in terms of the different kinds of industries that I've been involved with. So let's just talk about what we're going to do today. You know, I'm going to introduce, you know, a few words here that we put together to sort of bring you to the webinar. We are going to talk about lean. I will explain where we are. I will talk about, you know, nothing's really changed with lean. It's still very much a very powerful productivity improvement tool. But I will mention also that our opportunity is to actually link it with how we're going to support the reshoring operations into shorter and less expensive supply chains. And then I'll explain how that's happening as we move forward through this presentation. And also I'm going to, you know, as Ray said, I'm going to mention about Industry 4.0, and now that's a very useful lever for this reshoring activity that we're talking about, and how really the full reason for all this is continuous improvement. I'm going to cover that. This is not a lean training program. I can do that for you, but it is a future strategy discussion for lean and other business initiatives. So I'm going to try to open your eyes to where it's going, not so much where we've been. But I will give you an overview. I have to. I'll make sure you all know what my version of lean is, of course. And we all got to improve our businesses, and it never stops. I mean, we all know that. And it's a question of which improvement technology should you focus on. And I'm going to say that the best choice is lean. And there's a reason for that. It actually is a good starting, a solid starting point for ongoing continuous improvement. There are other tools, and I'll mention some of them as we go along. It is a religion. This is not a short-term, you know, project. This is a continuum of continuous improvement with this lean religion. You know, it isn't about looking good. It's not about just doing it for a day and saying you've done it. It's a religion. It isn't about just reducing costs. Accountants can do that, but it doesn't work. You'll cut bone and you'll have a disaster if you do that without being entitled. But it is about improving business performance. It's a high level discussion about how business performs, not just cost or quality or anything else. So this religion is about lean thinking. The sort of, you know, the language underneath is lean thinking is the way in which you approach the discussion about attacking waste. The practices you follow force you towards simplification of your process and getting to a better value-added ratio. And of course, making sure that you get rid of the waste before you automate. You don't want to be automating waste. And of course, when you've got there, you get a culture, get everybody involved, getting into that waste elimination structure. Everybody gets on the same train, so to speak, and you end up then with a lean enterprise where value is actually what you're delivering to your customers. And you've got the ability to continuously improve, because that is actually what you're doing. The goal is to get to a state of continuous improvement. And I like this, you know, I've been using this slide a long time. You know, everybody likes lean because it's simple, it's easy for everybody to understand, you can get your head around it. And quite frankly, everybody gets tired of pushing and pulling a business with square wheels. So there's a lot of interest in actually making it move a lot smoother. And what we find is that, yeah, you might need some external facilitation and education, but the improvements happen from within the business. Your own people can actually mobilize themselves into the improvements that you need. And so the message is get it better, and you can get this cart to actually go faster, go quicker with your own people's input. The measurements are simple. They haven't changed much. There are some funky measurements added, of course, but the main one is cycle time. How long it takes to do stuff, and there's the definition. You can start it right at the beginning of the first kind of customer expression of demand, right through to when you receive payment, and all the bits in between. So that is the key lean measurement. A lot of people forget that measurement, and you must have that at your fingertips at all time. Obviously, what we're going to do in any lean journey is start breaking down the process and understanding it and putting it into a cycle time initiative where we break activities into those that add value and those that add cost. And of course, what we're trying to do is get to a state where our cycle time equals our process time at a given level of technology. Now, when we start digging into this thing, the power word, the word I like to make sure is in the vocabulary, is waste. And there's 8 types of waste. And we've characterized waste very well as a toolkit within lean thinking. And when I started this journey, pretty much 90% of activities in most businesses were waste. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you that in a minute. But what we're trying to do is put all these things into the graveyard, bury them so they're not in our business. These are the waste factors, the things we don't want to do. It costs us money. However, my experience is there is a problem. It's not all sunshine and roses. There are some traps and some tender issues. And the problem is it's not all that easy to identify waste. People are trapped in paradigms, and sometimes, there's reasons for that, and they're human. They actually have that issue. And this is actually a bit of a test I used to give to plant managers. I used to put this up and say, okay, there's 16 activities here. It's kind of similar to your process. How many are waste? And they struggle, because it's a paradigm. They use these things every day. All of us do. But we don't realize there's actually 12 wastes here. And when we give it to them, they go, yeah, you're right. Those are waste, but we use those things, right? So there's a real trap here of breaking the paradigm and getting the religion to actually see the real waste in the business. And of course, when you've got rid of the waste, you're entitled to put it into a more linear flow, reduce the steps, and then of course, then add the capital and technology to even simplify it even further. And when you study this thing, you'll see there's the 10-to-1 ratio of the 90% waste, even in a simple example like this. So it's not hard to get 90% when you really understand the issues. So that's really, in a generic kind of lean thinking process: elimination, simplification, linearizing, and getting to and then being entitled to add technology and capital. And so that's exactly the way the measurement should go. You should have a baseline. The entitlement should be where you are with the existing capital, and then benchmark is taking it on with more expensive technology and capital. And so it's a hockey stick effect where you get from baseline to entitlement and before you actually add expensive technology. Okay, tools are simple. They've not changed too much. We've added some fancy stuff. Consultants tend to do that to you, but the basic tools: where are we now? Where do we want to go? The ugly and pretty picture. And then organizational mapping is definitely the sort of basic tool. We do measure, as I said, these cycle time calculations. And of course, you want to make sure, as was said by Ray, that you got the data to actually measure where you are. And you can use something called a cost time profile to do that, takes its data integrity, data rich. So what I find, and I'm going quick because this is just an overview, is that these are the comments I've had over the God knows how many years I've been at this, that people have given to me to prevent them from actually making the changes to get lean. And I think the biggest one is the one that needs to be broken, is we've always done it that way. So it's a paradigm shifter, or needs a paradigm shifter. And that's about getting the religion. And in fact, unfortunately, it's the definition of insanity, as we know, right? So the biggest sort of sin in the religion is not actually expecting the same results from not doing anything different. What helps, and what a lot of people forget, and I've seen a lot of even lean consultants go do mapping and they don't really know where they're going, is you must have a vision to go from at least baseline to entitlement. And a vision is a really extra special skill set. You need a vision for what would the business look like when you've leaned it out. Very powerful tool, generates that shifting in paradigms. Even if it's an impossible mission for some people, it creates emotional tension, which is what change is all about. And you can manage and measure just exactly the outcome if you had that vision. What would be the savings if you went to that vision? And that's what forces people to change. They need that vision to step over the reality and these paradigm shifts that they're in. The other thing that helps you is benchmarking. Not used that much. It should be used more. And that's where you go off and find out who's best in class. Look across the aisle, so to speak, within your own industry. And of course, outside of your industry with similar processes, like order entry systems are a good example, where you can go anywhere and look at the best in class order entry system. Doesn't matter what product it is, you can actually improve it. But benchmarking is a very powerful sort of reality check as to whether you're doing it right. Quite frankly, it can become a copy, steal, cheat kind of discussion, where you're stealing from the competitors. I was in China for 7 years. I saw a lot of that. But you really need to study where the competition is, and you know, it can be almost industrial espionage in some respects, but benchmarking is very powerful to bring back the gap that you got to fill. So let me kick back and just give you the environment. Ray touched on this. The continuous improvement environment you need to actually overlay onto your business to get things done. First, of course, we mentioned is lean. Okay, yeah, you apply it, it squeezes out the waste in your process, and it makes it better. The other thing is that when you have a product process relationship, you probably and it needs improvement, or you can do better, you probably need a Six Sigma environment. Now, Six Sigma was developed by Motorola not to improve the process. They already had tools for that. It was actually for us to get a measured improvement environment for the big three, marketing, engineering, and manufacturing together, so that as a team, we started to look at the interactivity between the requirements of the product and the capability of the process. And so that's not quite what, say, GE did with Six Sigma. It was called something else there, but Motorola's theme was, let's get the engineers together, both sides of the fence, in engineering, in design, and also manufacturing, and understand exactly what the product process interface would look like. Some people call it design for manufacturability. What we're doing in the top right there is squeezing down the process bell curve by process improvement, whilst understanding the manufacturability issues to actually really alleviate the stress on the process by doing smart design, basically. And that's how you get Six Sigma. The rest of the environment is something that was mentioned by Ray, which is OEE. Okay, you've got the overall process being managed by Lean. You've got the product process interface being managed by Six Sigma. Right down at the work center level, right down at the operation level, you now go in and figure out how good is it in terms of its performance, quality, availability, and performance. So you now have a very detailed dive into the performance of every individual step in the process. On top of that, you need to pull it all together with something that provides a platform as you make change so that you stay stable. And that's what an ISO standard system does. It provides you with that environment so that as you do change, you can still document and say what you do and do what you say. And on top of that, you need your operating practices to make sure your process is actually supported with the people. You know, they're using the other tools that are mentioned sometimes, 5S, TPM, you know, rapid changeovers, and communication tools, visual factory, etc. All these are part of Lean, and they're all to make sure that you've got an operating practice that everybody can get behind. And so you don't just make a change on a Monday and it's out of control by Wednesday. You make sure that in lockstep, your process is still managed. And by the way, your system keeps up with your process as well. In terms of implementation, you know, if you're starting out, it's pretty straightforward. You just get going and you start a few projects. But if you're really trying to put a formal continuous improvement system together, it probably has to have these components. You probably will need a vision, so you keep everybody moving forward. You need to decide what concepts for improvement you're going to use, whether it's Lean, Six Sigma, or whatever. You're going to need to decide how you're going to engage and empower your people with facilitation and education. What kind of team structures are you going to have? And you need one integrated plan. One of the big mistakes is to have all these parallel plans and duplicitous activity. So you need one evolution plan that ties everything together with performance measures and also from time to time scorecarding with benchmarking. And then eventually you'll start to put together a decent set of projects and programs to get things done. And I'm going to cover a few other structural points next. If you're going to do this, you need a process to actually form those teams and do the planning. I've got a process, many other consultants do, make sure that it's robust and that it follows an understandable routine, so that you have a planning process where you define the projects, which you can update. That typically can be as much as a 6-week activity to do properly for a medium-sized company or a division. And then it could take a year to get to entitlement, which means you've got to keep working on the projects over time, you know, with that management commitment to keep things going. But you need that kind of team structure because you will have to cross-function people and make sure they're working together on common goals. The other trick is to have a horizontal view of your business by breaking your business into these 5 business loops. So you can segment the business, so you can organize and mobilize the waste, so you're not boiling the ocean. And so each one of these loops is actually something you probably initiate as a project goal or a program. So the idea is that you don't attack the whole business at once. You try to segment it horizontally so you can get it going. So you might attack the make ship loop first and get the shop floor sorted. And then you might move on to the supply chain, or you might go to new product introduction using Six Sigma. So a lot of people try to keep themselves organized with these loops, okay? And I've given you actually a paper on the 5 loops. The other structure that people use is a tier process. Any improvement mechanism can be high level, what we call tier 1, where you're putting in pool systems, designing your process, deciding your next layout version of your physical layout, deciding what systems you're going to use. And then in the middle, you've got the process improvement projects where you're just attacking the waste in every individual process. And then in parallel, you're probably putting your operating practices together so that you've got your people ready for the changes. And in fact, what people do is they apply this probably at sub-department level. And this again this is a process where you start with the process, you improve it, you make sure that those improvements are then managed in tier 1 with the changes to your planning process, and then you can undertake physical layout changes and add systems. So it's a kind of an organized way to make sure that you get projects finished and then you don't know what you're going to do with them. This is still a planning tool. I don't know how many of you are actually undertaking lean where you are in the journey. I would say, my sort of top tip, my hot tip, if you will, is keep it simple, but effective. And, if you're managing a team, or you've got a bunch of teams formed and you're trying to manage the outcome as a manager, I figure there's only 5 key questions to ask the team once you get them going. How is the team working? How are you all doing? The personal stuff. Making sure the team's functional. That's question 1. 2, are you focused on the bottleneck? There's no point doing projects that aren't going to get the bottom line improved, if that's possible. And so working towards a bottleneck in any particular part of the process is very useful. That would be my second question. And then 3, 4, and 5, is the process reliable? Meaning, does it work? And does it stay working? Is the process capable? Does it make good parts, good product, to provide good services? And is the process flexible? Can you put a variety of products and services through the same process? And if you can improve all those 3 things, you have a better process. And of course, your process is everything you do, your materials, your equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And your lean training should enable everyone to respond to these questions I mentioned already, because that's actually what improvement projects and improvement teams should be able to do. So what I want to do next, I've kind of given you a little bit of where most people are at, where they've been. They've probably made some progress. They formed projects. They may have got a formal project structure or improvement system. They may have a vision, but that's lean. But lean's moving on. There's a few things to tell you about where we're going. And, this is actually probably the important part of the presentation. We started in 85 talking about 84, 83. I started talking about cycle time, which became lean. And we were in a pre-globalized state. I mean, back then, we didn't have globalized manufacturing. It was pretty much localized. Little MRP. I think Ray would probably remember back that far. We had MRP with small letters. We were talking JIT. And we had lean manufacturing mostly focused on the shop floor. That's where we were. What happened in a couple of decade was we blew through and integrated Six Sigma into the continuous improvement journey. MRP became big MRP, and we moved from the manufacturing space to operations in general as far as lean was concerned, even the white collar. We were still at that particular point struggling with systems. We were in parallel with the ERP system. ERP was there. We were discussing how to get the new process into a new system, and we were still questioning that. In parallel, though, we were making improvements. Through that period up to 2000, industrial productivity was on the rise. People were beginning to get rid of waste. They were beginning to automate certain parts of the process. And we were into NAFTA. We were actually starting production in most of these Mexican maquiladora plants back in those days. So that's kind of where we were in 2000. What happened in the next 15 years is we started globalizing manufacturing. Six Sigma became, we got good, by the way, at integration of systems, ERP, the CAE tools, and the shop floor began to get integrated. We were definitely looking at our supply chains now because we were globalizing. And so our lean enterprise tools were beginning to get integrated not only with the engineering tools, but also across the supply chain. So 2015 was kind of, where we've been. In parallel, of course, that was being driven by the fact that we were globalizing. We were sourcing offshore. China joined the WTO in the late 90s, and NAFTA manufacturing was in decline. And so we were beginning to see some problems with our local manufacturing. What's happening now from 2015 onwards is we're now deglobalizing. Not everybody's in that mode, but theoretically everything's going on. The ERP is continuing. Lean supply chains are now extending, and the stuff in red is what I'm going to cover next, where people are beginning to look at localized lean trade blocks. Industry 4 is on the street, and we are facing something called sustainability. The activity, though, is creating 85% of our corporations are looking at reshoring, so to match up with that deglobalization strategy. And we're seeing about a 50% growth in reshoring year over year across many sectors. And so I'm going to talk now about this next period, which is where we are today and where we're going for, say, 2025. That's what I'm going to do next. Remembering we've done a lot. We've integrated quite a lot of our systems with the lean practices, but we now have another chore, which is reversing globalization and deglobalizing. And that's why I wrote the second book, because I wanted to document exactly all the things I've seen that are going to happen, or have happened, and are going to happen as far as the Western economies are concerned. We've done some stuff wrong. We probably have lost some ground in terms of our manufacturing capability through globalization. But it is an imperative for the Western economies to get their manufacturing back into the right place so that our supply chains are secure. So what I'm going to talk about next is probably the biggest lean study of all time. It isn't shop floor lean anymore, it's global lean I'm going to talk about. Where we were in about 1995 was we were beginning to globalize and have liberalized global free trade. From 1980 till now, we've increased global trade 8 times. Okay, but it's questionable as to whether we've improved prosperity to match that. And so there's some big questions about, was globalization worth it? Is some people's minds a question. Of course, we've seen a lot of damage. We've seen a lot of Rust Belt activity, and a lot of people concerned, probably going back to 2010. It was about the time I came back from China. Having been there for 7 years, I was very horrified with what I've been part of. But that's exactly where we've been. We've actually, stripped out and hollowed out some of our manufacturing base in some sectors. We did that through globalized manufacturing by using containerization, taking materials from one part of the world, shipping it in these containers to low-cost countries, and then taking it to consumers that can afford to buy them. And that's really what we've grown through in the last 30 years. In these things, these waste machines, there's no manufacturing done on these puppies. They're moving expensive, they're operating with very expensive bunker fuel and moving non-value added inventory around, not very lean, unfortunately. And they're very, very heavy on carbon footprint. Some numbers there. It'd be a surprise to some people just how dangerous to the climate these particular devices are. So that's kind of where we are. We've got global supply chains. I've described it already, long supply chains, using a lot of inventory, expensive cost drivers. Long supply chains are expensive. Some non-value added activities in the supply chain, and very dependent on inventory, and therefore very dependent on low interest rates, which are going up. And so there's some panic setting in about the cost of these supply chains in a lot of quarters. So what's happening is, not immediately, that was an easy one to move, but it's going to take a long time, is morphing back to localized trade blocks, where we have more closed loop, shorter supply chains, less inventory, et cetera, more lean and green, if you will, intrinsically less wasteful. And then the trade will still take place. There will still be raw resources traded for other nations that need them for their own economy, and we'll be doing more necessary trade, as it's called, and maybe more equitable knowledge trade transfer. So that's the vision of the future for a lot of the economists that are now deciding that perhaps it was a mistake to over-globalize on a free trade basis. So my book talks a lot about why we did it, and in fact, why we're reversing it now. When you start running a lean study on this stuff, it's horrific. You know, global supply chains got a lot of waste in it. Local supply chains done properly can have very much less, and there's significant double-digit benefits. So when I did a big study with other consulting groups in the last 5 years, it's horrific in terms of the savings that are on the table if we do it properly. Of course, there's also less supply chain risk. You know, we know that there's long supply chains are more risky and less secure and less robust. The other thing is inventory is the enemy. At the top of the 8 waste is inventory. Even though the accountants like to think that they're an asset, they aren't. There's the list of all of the kinds of types of inventory that are defined, and I put them into a global supply chain. And yeah, there's also some additional transactions because of borders. But if you then take it and put it global, you can actually eliminate quite a few of those categories and also reduce the level of the rest. And so you end up with an advantageous, shorter, local, and less complex supply chain. That's why the corporations are looking at reshoring, mainly. Okay, much leaner. You know, leaner. We've forgotten what lean was when we designed these supply chains, and we're just remembering it again. Less inventory, of course, is the outcome, which is also, unfortunately, tying up cash and, you know, having the inability to redeploy that cash somewhere else in the business. These are real numbers. I kept them really simple on the screen here, but in 2000, we were enjoying about a 10% offshore advantage in landed costs. These are actually delta costs. So our supply chain costs have risen slightly, and they're going to kick up even more so when you add the cost of the inventory trapped in them. And on the other curve, we've seen labor cost delta reduce between low-cost countries and onshore countries. And now we're seeing it going to further spike down with Industry 4.0, which I'm going to talk about next. So we've got this bell at the end, which is advantage onshore, which is now looking to be between 15 and 25% over and above going to an offshore environment. Massive amounts of savings to do it properly on a local basis. So Industry 4 is a key to the kingdom in some respects. It's a key lever to enable take-back manufacturing. I'm going to explain that. First of all, what is Industry 4? To me, it's a lot of people talk about it in different ways, but to me, it's cyber physical. What we're doing is we're connecting computers or processes together without human intervention. We tried that in the third revolution, not that well. I think we've now got the technology to do it properly, which is really Industry 4.0. And that's because we've got these disruptive technologies. We've got great connectivity. Ray mentioned that. We've got newer, more advanced automation that's harnessing machine sensoring and other technologies associated with making the machine more flexible and able to actually think like a human. And on top of that, we've got artificial intelligence. I call it big data, which is putting all the knowledge we have at the point of use in real time. You put those 3 things together, we can make cyber physical systems happen. And of course, what happens if you actually take labor content out of the equation and trade it with the expense of a long supply chain, the delta shows that you will reshore. And that's exactly the other reason why these corporations are looking at reshoring. So now we don't have any leverage or interest in low-cost labor. It's all about, you know, installing Industry 4.0 and getting rid of the inventory in long supply chains. That's where the action is. And being closer to the customer and having a shorter cycle time. So cyber physical is all about getting rid of the hands. I'll pause here for a bit. This is actually work we've done together on Industry 4.0, and it's a major system function chart. We have a separate presentation that takes you through this and talks about how all these subsystems work together. At the bottom is all of the physical processes, your supply chain, your manufacturing process, your distribution system, etc. Above that are the subsystems that support it, and some of them you'll understand are computer systems. The manufacturing systems, of course, are to do with tying all your automation together, having a very slick, capable, productive maintenance system, making sure your data is available on time, and that you can manage inventory even more than you can today. Guess what? At the top of this whole thing is ERP, because that's where the data resides. That's where the knowledge base is collected, and we're going to need that. So, unless you've got a strong and capable ERP system or a planning one, your journey to 4.0 may be disadvantaged. There are going to be some movements. You're going to get some stuff done. Eventually, you've got to have that not only the ERP system, but a strong CAE system for your new products as well. There's no point automating the hell out of the shop floor if you're still moving pieces of paper around at the top of the business. Of course, to do Industry 4, we're going to need a handshake between the technology folks and the continuous improvement folks to make sure we don't automate waste. And we're going to still be shifting that paradigm so that we continue the improvements. A lot of people are looking at how to explain this stuff, and this is a 10 combat drill list of things that we're using as a teaching aid for people. And you can see the first two things on the list of combat drills is waste. So there's lean, and even though it's an Industry 4.0 journey, waste elimination is very much at the top of the discussion. That's why lean and Industry 4.0 and ERP and all the other things have to communicate with each other. Okay. Next generation of lean thinking, though, is having solved the business side of things and solved the supply chain side and understood that we're going to have shorter supply chains. We're going to have businesses that are connected together more locally. We then have this bigger picture called sustainability, which is very useful because it moves away from just business and starts looking at the environment, and it starts looking at the social aspects. And so this is kind of like a national level discussion on what kind of economy do we want, what kind of environment do we want to undertake or support, and what should our people enjoy as far as things like standard of living is concerned. Getting all those three things right is called, the balancing of sustainability. The other comment, this is very much political. It's now perceived that sustainability will be better undertaken or achieved via a national self-determination plan, not through global accords, which is where it started. So there's a lot of pushback on these global accords and more national level, soul searching on how to get this right. So that's where lean's going. A lot of us are talking about how to help with the calculations for sustainability between these three things. A big outcome of that sustainability discussion is something called a circular supply chain or circular economy. And it's one of the strategies for sustainability. And it's about recycling everything that we use and make and consume. And this is so you have a closed loop between the material flow. And of course, that means, you might think of it as the plastics recovery system that we're trying to undertake in the nation on steroids, but it's actually a higher level of thing altogether. It's about really not wasting anything. Okay. Now this is going to be very difficult to deploy in a global supply chain. And so the advantage of going local and having a local trade block environment provides a good advantage for circular supply chains to be undertaken. So the advantage is the local supply chain. I've gone kind of fast. I've taken up, I'm almost going to leave time for questions. But I just want to pause here. I've been through where we have been. I've explained lean manufacturing and how it's evolved. I've explained the real goal is continuous improvement. I've talked about the relationships between lean and the other tools that you'll come across, such as Six Sigma. I've talked about how ISO is part of the continuous improvement stability. I've talked about lean organization and the people culture and how important it is to get your teams built properly so you can get things done in a meaningful way and get commitment. And of course, I talked about how to implement it with the structure that I recommend becomes part of your culture when you move forward. Then I went on and I talked about the fact that lean needs to link with the business systems. We've achieved that. There's a lot more linkage now than ever before. I believe we've solved most of the problems. All that's left is probably a little bit of work that us experts are working on for Industry 4.0, but a lot of people should be focused on understanding 4.0 this time. And of course, if you're going to do that, you're going to need to if you haven't done any lean, then you should, you should couple the lean activity with whatever you're going to do for Industry 4.0 because they're so compatible. And of course, then lean local supply chains are where we're headed. We are deglobalizing. There's reasons, many reasons, some political and some to do with business cost. And of course, the big picture to make everybody happy, the environment, the economy, and our people is sustainability. I've covered all those. The other thing I want to mention is that, this is part of the job, I suppose, is that I keep picking on people who are looking at the future. And, you look at these pictures of our new transportation modes and you say, okay, good. That's nice. That's great. But as a lean consultant, you start to dream and scheme even higher than what you see the other experts thinking about. So what I want you to do, I want you to think about your own business when I do the next slide and think about how much more it can be if you leaned it out. Because maybe with a bit of lean vision and technology, we can have this. And of course, eat your heart out, Air Canada. But if somewhere in the future, Star Trek did us a big favor. I don't know how much of you are Trekkie fans, but we have cell phones. Star Trek had them first. We have iPads. We still don't have the transporter beam. I hate traveling by air. Wouldn't it be great? And it's a lean process, instantaneous transfer. Questions?
Would like to also give you a reading list for lean. Some of the material here is some of the original material that we had dating back to the original book, The Goal. And there's other books, including mine, shown in the reading list. Also, further information on what I provide you as various educational packages and some information on Lean Six Sigma certification that might be useful. And of course, our coordinates for our consulting practice. Also, some additional resources for the new book, Take Back Manufacturing, which goes through our new website, our homepage on the initiative. Also, a more detailed explanation of Industry 4.0 in an earlier seminar that we gave. And of course, we also have more videos that you can watch on that website associated with different things that we covered in the outline that we've just given you. With that also, if you will need to contact the 6X partners to understand the Epicor solution, there's information contained on the last slide. And with that, thank you so much.